Welcome to church. I'm Peter.
And I'm Dade. We're both Sunlight Kids leaders here at Calvary.
If this is your first time joining us, we'd love to get to know you and answer any questions you might have. Simply text HELLO to 587-323-1199 and we'll reply right back. Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoy the service.
The changes brought by COVID-19 have been difficult. Our lives changed overnight as everything shut down. We were forced to deal with isolation in a way we've never experienced. Suddenly, in the midst of the darkness, God showed up, like He always does, turning fear into faith, quarantine into connecting, and downtime into precious time. Relationships were strengthened unexpectedly. And another thing changed. People all over the world, including our friends, neighbors, coworkers, and families, became more open than ever before to hearing the gospel of hope. The pandemic shook us, but it did not crush us. We shared good times and bad times virtually. We realized what is truly important in this world: each other. The church rose up to help those in need and to be the hands and feet of Jesus during this difficult time. We found out we are stronger together. As life returns to normal and things reopen, we'll never forget how important our relationships are and the value of spending time with loved ones in person. As we're able to gather again, face to face, think of every person in your life, at every age and every stage. They're waiting on an invitation to church from you. Because in every way that God connects us, we are stronger together, now more than ever.
Well, good morning. How many of you enjoyed the worship this morning? Didn't they do a great job? Thank you, worship team. You know, I'm so thankful for technology, but I tell you what, there's just nothing like being together in God's presence. This is amazing. This is incredible. I'm so thankful that we can do this and so grateful. So I want to welcome you on this beautiful fall morning. I'm Pastor Doug. You can tell fall is coming, knocking on the door, because it's cooler in the mornings and cooler in the evenings. And that means winter is not far behind. Aren't you excited? I'm not excited. So in Edmonton, one of the cool fall traditions is that our young adults and our teens, our youth visit the Edmonton Corn Maze. And I wanted to thank Justin Ng for sending me this picture of the Edmonton Corn Maze. Isn't it cool? It's stronger together, and it's got a heart. It goes right along with what we're teaching on. And on their website, I really like this on their website. They said 2020, like this maze, like this corn maze, 2020 is often difficult to navigate and full of challenges. And we know that's been true. As the pastors here at Calvary, we've watched 2020 unfold in many unsettling ways, and we felt a strong sense, I guess you could say we felt a real urgency that for us not just to survive this year, but for us to thrive. For us to thrive this year during these uncertain times, we would really need God's strength. But in addition to that, we would really need each other. We would really need one another. And that's why we chose the series Stronger Together. So we would kick off the fall season emphasizing that importance. And as you know, we have an amazing community here that is composed of a hugely diverse group of individuals and families. And God has connected and joined us all together. And in that connecting together, there's tremendous strength and there's tremendous security. We all know that a single strand of rope can never compare to the strength that you find when you take several strands and you join them together. This rope is not just 3 times stronger than this rope. This rope is exponentially many times stronger. And that's the principle which forms our series, Stronger Together. If we were a single rope by ourselves, we might be overwhelmed or overcome by adversity or by fear, but woven together, we have tremendous strength. We have the ability to resist the most fearsome storm or circumstances. Caleb? Thank you. So, this morning the title of my sermon is Together We Experience Love, or Lessons I Learned from the Princess Bride. So, Pastor Doug, why do you always have such odd titles to your sermons? Very good question. So I'll answer it by asking you a question. How many of you saw Pastor OJ's cool Lego designs that his grandkids put together last week? How many of you saw those? Weren't they awesome? They were great, and pretty much everyone could relate to how they illustrated to us that Lego blocks of different sizes, different shapes, different styles and colors, they're really nothing by themselves as individual pieces, but rather they were invented, they were created for connection. And how when we as individuals are connected together, we form the church. Not the building, but we form a community that loves and cares for each other. And we want to share that love with God, with our neighbors and our friends and our family. So Pastor OJ used a very relevant cultural example, Lego, that we can all relate to, so that people could understand a very important principle. So the odd or fun titles to my sermons are for the same purpose: to illustrate very important principles through relevant and popular cultural examples. Kind of the same way Jesus taught using stories. And it was really cool. Friday I went to get my hair cut, and I'm talking with the gentleman cutting my hair, and he asks what I do for a living, and I explain that I'm a pastor. And he's, oh, really? Well, what are you going to speak about this Sunday? And I said, I'm going to be talking about love and the Princess Bride. And he's like, The Princess Bride, that's like my favorite movie ever. And it opened up this cool conversation, this cool bridge to talk about faith, to talk about God's love to someone who had never experienced it before. So the Princess Bride movie that was made back in 1987 has been called the greatest fairy tale ever told. It's been called a timeless classic, the most epic love story of all time. It's filled with pirates and assassins and sword fights and giants and princesses and exciting chases and daring escapes, but most importantly, miracles and true love. It's about the bond of love between a grandson and a grandfather, between a father and a son. It's about true friendship, overcoming adversity through love, and the undying power of true love. But just a quick time out, okay? Parents, grandparents, and others. As a pastor, this is not necessarily a direct endorsement of the movie. Not that it's a real bad movie, and on the other hand, not that it doesn't have a few issues, but you need to do the research for yourself and for your own kids or teens, and you need to set the standards for your own family, okay? Because I've seen a pastor who used the Rambo movie for illustrations, and then some kind little old lady probably went home and figured it was a wonderful Christian movie since the pastor was talking about it, and she rented it and then almost fainted when everything started blowing up and everybody started getting shot. Or another pastor used Raiders of the Lost Ark as his example, And then parents may have thought, yeah, let's watch it with our little kids. And so at the end, when the evil Nazis open the Ark of the Covenant and then their faces start melting and everything, their kids probably had nightmares for weeks. So please hear where I'm coming from this morning. I'm using the movie for some illustrations, but you decide for your family if it's okay. So we'll get back to the movie in a minute, but as I mentioned, our series is called Stronger Together. And we're drawing lessons from the book of Ephesians. So the city of Ephesus, as Pastor OJ explained last week, was located in what is today modern Turkey. And the church there was a very diverse, very multi-ethnic church surrounded by a variety of ideas and beliefs and practices. And they were facing very, very similar challenges to what we face today. And into that very diverse and divided culture, Paul writes about the incredible need for togetherness and how we can experience God's peace and God's love in community. Did you know that the word community means common unity? Isn't that cool? It means common unity. It means that a tremendous diverse group of people from different backgrounds and races and social and economic statuses can look beyond themselves and can see how they can be stronger together when they have in common a love for God and a love for each other. And like the believers in the early churches at Ephesus, we as a church, we have committed to journeying together. And as we study the book of Ephesus and the ideas it presents, it's because we want to understand and we want to renew our commitment as a church to be a welcoming community of God's love and peace and grace. We want to encourage and support each other as you and I discover the greater purpose and calling of God in our lives as individuals, but also as a common community together. The church by its very nature, not the building, but the church by its very nature is a place where we live and we learn and we worship and we grow, and then we go out and we make an impact in our world together. So in the first half of the book of Ephesians, Paul primarily explains God's plan for rescuing the human race, for bringing all of creation back into relationship with himself. This was his master plan throughout all of history. And by God coming to earth as a humble man to be together with humanity once again, Jesus rescued you and I by fulfilling that plan. And as a result, together, we can experience his love in relationship, personally with God himself and with each other. And God's love is always conditional. It never gives up. It's always pursuing us. And sometimes it's unreciprocated by us when we don't understand his incredible love. Or sometimes we even reject God's love. Okay, I remember my first case of unrequited love. There may have been 2 or 3 throughout my life, but my first one, I was 6 years old, and I had a major crush on my 18-year-old pretty red-headed Sunday school teacher. So what was 12 years difference? I mean, no big deal. And I knew that it must be love because I would wait in the parking lot after church and I would throw snowballs at her when she came out of the building. It was so exhilarating. It was so exciting. But needless to say, my parents disapproved. Her parents disapproved. I got in trouble for throwing snowballs, and my love for her was doomed to never work out. But you know what? God's love never disappoints. So in the second half of Ephesians, Paul wraps up his description of God's incredible plan and his incredible love throughout all of time, bringing God and humanity together and bringing all people together, regardless of who they are. So he summarizes this plan and God's amazing unconditional love in Ephesians 3. He says, I pray that Christ will live in your hearts by faith and that your life will be strong in love and be built on love. And I pray that you and all God's holy people will have the power to understand the greatness of Christ's love, how wide and how long and how high and how deep that love is. Love is greater than anyone can ever know. But I pray that you will be able to know that love. Then you can be filled with the fullness of God. So this morning we're going to see some characteristics of God's love. And the first one is God's love is greater than anyone can ever know. The Princess Bride has many memorable lines that fans love to repeat, but definitely the one-word line that fans always come up with when talking about this movie is inconceivable. Inconceivable. Excuse me. The word is used multiple times by the poor assassin in the movie when he can't comprehend why his perfect plan isn't working out. Nothing frustrates him more than when his supposed great intelligence can't understand or grasp something. And that's the idea that Paul's trying to convey here in verse 19, that Christ's love is truly inconceivable, beyond the ability of our human minds to grasp or to understand or conceive. This must be an incredible, vast, limitless love, wider and longer and higher and deeper, wider than the universe, longer than eternity itself, higher than the stars above, and deeper than the deepest ocean. Romans 11 says, "Oh, the depths of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable are his judgments and decisions, and how unfathomable and untraceable are his ways and his love." A fathom is a unit to measure the depth of water or the depth of the ocean. And when something is unfathomable, it means that it is deeper than we could ever imagine or ever measure. God's love is truly unfathomable. It is so deep and so strong and so incredible. We can never measure it, never mind completely understanding it. The second thing is God's love is a free gift and cannot be stopped. God's love is a free gift and cannot be stopped. 2 Corinthians 9 says, "Now thanks be to God for his gift, his precious gift, beyond telling, his indescribable, inexpressible free gift." Another line in The Princess Bride says, "Death cannot stop true love. All it can do is delay it for a while." Satan tried to stop God's plan for true love for all of humanity by putting Jesus to death. But he could not stop God's true love because Jesus willingly died for us. And his death and resurrection proved God's incredible love for us. Romans 5:6 says, "When we were utterly helpless, Christ came at just the right time and died for us sinners." And this is the kind of love that God freely offers us, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done. And this is the kind of love that we can experience and model together in community. That leads us to God's love is relational. You see, the thing about God's love is it was always meant to be shared It's always meant to be experienced together. It's together that our ability to grasp God's deep love deepens. And it's together that it's a reflection, our love for each other is a reflection of God's love for us. You see, God dwells with his people. God lives with his people. So his love is present when we come together. As we gather, we experience God's love in very, very tangible ways. We find support, we find belonging, we find acceptance, we find encouragement, and we even find strength from each other. We see love in and through other people's lives, even when it's cloudy or foggy or disappointing or heartbreaking in our own lives. Coming to church isn't about coming to a building or coming to a group. It's about coming together as community into the shared expression and transformative power of God's love. The next one is God's love causes us to grow. God's love causes us to grow. If all we do is show up here occasionally, or we don't engage with others, or we don't engage online, or we don't let people get too close, if we social distance our hearts, then we'll miss the fullness of God's love. We will miss the mark. But instead, it's so exciting if we gather here together as community or in a small group and we're full of expectation and openness and grace to let down our guard before God and other people. Then we're getting somewhere. If we're willing to humbly recognize our need for help, for forgiveness, for strength, for a deeper kind of life, then we reach a vulnerability. And not everybody likes to be vulnerable, but we reach a vulnerability that allows us to be known to others and allows us to know God and others authentically. And if we're willing to acknowledge our own needs and weaknesses, then we're able to receive support and encouragement when we need it, and to offer acceptance and help to others when they need it. And in all these things, we're experiencing the transforming power of God's love in our individual lives and as a church community. And when this happens, we're tapping into the very nature of God, because God doesn't just have love or show love. God is love. His very nature is love. So how do we together experience God's love? Well, there's 3 C's, CCC, 3 C's. The first one is connection. So 1 John 4 tells us that, dear friends, we should love each other because love comes from God. Everyone who loves has become God's child. And so everyone who loves knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. And then Jesus himself goes on to tell us, your love for one another, our love for each other, will prove to the world that you are my followers, or you are my disciples. So obviously, experiencing love together as a community is so important, because we live in a world of separation and division and isolation, which is exactly what our enemy wants. and exactly the opposite of what God intended. And this pandemic has made things far worse. We're bombarded with messages of separate, isolate, stay at home, stay away, cover yourselves. And sure, technology is incredible. It's allowed us to join from afar. And it's increased our ability to connect. But one of the downsides of technology is that it's decreased the depth and the authenticity of our connection. And Jesus' desire for us, his prayer for us, is that we would have a deep, unifying connection with him and with one another. He says in John 17, "Father, I pray that all who believe in me, that all of us can be one. You are in me and I am in you. I pray that they can also be one in us. Then the world will believe that you sent me." Jesus' prayer for us is that the world would see, they would believe in him. They would believe in him because you and I have both a connection to God and a connection to each other as community. Because all of life was created by God and for love and for the purpose of relationship or connection with God and with others. In the Princess Bride, you have this whole ragtag, motley crew of characters that are motivated by and for the purpose of true love. And last week, Pastor OJ shared about the importance of connection with God and with one another. He talked about the importance of having a daily personal connection with God. That's our vertical connection. And also very crucial is that connection to others that God has put you into community with. That is your horizontal connection. You know, you can meet together with us on Sunday mornings in person as we follow the AHS guidelines, or you can meet together with us online thanks to technology. But you have to be intentional about it. You have to be intentional. And it's also important to have a connection with other believers during the week, like a small group or in person or online or some other type of connection. Since the beginning of the COVID pandemic, many people have become disconnected with community, and they've been disconnected with their relationship with God. And that is not a healthy place to be. As a matter of fact, that is why Paul warns us in Hebrews that if we're not intentional, it could become a habit for some believers to stop meeting or engaging with other believers. Paul says, not forsaking our meeting together as believers for worship and instruction, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more faithfully as you see the day of Christ's return approaching. Are we in the last days? It could be. Are things progressing forward? It definitely seems to be. But what is so important, probably more important than anything else, is our connection with one another. The second C, it's a double C, it's care or comfort. So how do we experience God's love and community? By caring for others, by putting the needs of others above our own, let's admit it, often selfish love, by having unselfish love. In Romans it says, be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Practice hospitality. Life isn't easy, and it's especially difficult when we're trying to do it on our own. So many people in this society during this time have no hope because they have no connection, because they're on their own. We need each other as a church and as a community. We want to be there for each other. God's love binds us together and gives us opportunities to care for each other in times of need. You know, the Bible says we're to weep with those who weep, and we're to mourn with those who mourn. The third C is collaboration. And collaboration means working together towards a common purpose. Collaboration. So from meeting each other's needs, like we mentioned, to harnessing our skills and abilities towards a common goal. We all have skills and talents and abilities and the energy to serve and to make a real difference in other people's lives. So what gifts and talents has God given you that could bless this community? Some key areas include our children's department. This is huge. This is huge. You're investing in the future. You're investing in future leaders, future husbands, future wives, future families. What could be more important? Do you like technology? Well, our tech booth has doubled in size, and so has our volunteer team. So we could use you. Do you have skills in singing or playing an instrument? We'd love for you to try out for our praise and worship team. We'd love to have you on board. Do you love people and hospitality? Consider becoming a life group leader or starting an initiative like blessing your neighbors or blessing your community. Do you have a passion for justice? How important is that? You know, there are opportunities that when we in collaboration, we're greater than our individual parts, greater than our individual strengths. We're able to find fulfillment together, the expression of our God-given talents and abilities. If you'd like to help in any area, you want to be part of that collaboration, please come and talk to one of us pastors and we'll point you in the right direction. So the worship team can go ahead and come back up on stage. So in closing, I wanted to read from Psalms 133. It says, "How good and how pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. It's like precious oil poured on the head, running down on Aaron's beard, down on the collar of his robe. It is as if the dew of Hermon were falling on Mount Zion, for there the Lord bestows, commands his blessing, even life forevermore." So it's kind of an odd picture, but when we understand it, it paints a beautiful, incredible picture, showing us that when God's people, when you and I, all of us together, we love and care for each other, and we're in unity, there are two outcomes. The first is we're anointed with the oil that sets God's people apart for service. You and I become set apart by God for service. And the second is the dew that brought incredible life and greenery to Mount Hermon. So when we're in unity and we're loving and caring for each other in community, we are actually set apart by God to bring incredible life and hope to the world around us. And as verse 3 also tells us, when we're together in love and unity and we're bringing life to the world around us, there God commands his incredible blessing on us for now and for eternity. The overall theme of The Princess Bride, and much more importantly, the overall theme of God's incredible plan for us, is that true love wins. And this morning we've seen how that love is so much stronger when we're experiencing it together as community. Amen? Amen. So if you have never today experienced God's incredible, amazing love, I want to give you that opportunity in just a second. God's love is so huge, so awesome, and it reaches out to you no matter who you are or what you've done. And I'm going to pray a simple prayer this morning, and I want you to repeat it after me out loud. You don't have to shout it, you can just kind of quietly say it out loud. But I want everyone praying it today. If you're watching at home, I want you praying along as well. So just bow your heads with me and repeat after me. Dear God, thank you for your incredible love for me. It doesn't matter who I am or what I've done. Thank you for your gift of love, for sending Jesus to die for me. I'm sorry for my sins. Please forgive me and come into my life today. Wow, that might be the first time you've ever talked to God, and if it is, that is so cool. So we'd love to connect with you in a more personable way. There's several ways you can connect with us. You can text in to the number that's going to be on the screen in a second. You can connect with us in person. You can call the church office. You can even come by to the front here and talk with myself or another pastor after church is over. And if you want prayer for anything too, we're here to pray for you and to encourage you, because that is what it's all about. That's what connection is all about.
Thanks for joining us today. If you have any questions or if you need assistance, don't hesitate to contact the church office.
You can find more information on our website, and as always, you can join us live on Sundays at 10 a.m. on our Facebook and YouTube page or at calvarycommunity.ca/live.
We'll see you next week.
You gotta do the super generic wave.